Right. Matthew, it's great to have you on the podcast today. How you doing?
Hey, Adam. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, you're really welcome. And I just kind of thought I'd kind of introduce you by kind of how you kind of got into what you do, because you're the author and podcast host, non-profit founder, wellness and kindness advocate of company called is it Ziems?
Yeah,
Ziems?
I know it's going to trip you up in the UK. So officially for you, I'd say Zisms, just so it's
Right.
clean. Here in the States, it's Zisms. And subtitle of the book is Insights to Live By, which is the name of the podcast.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely a play on words, isn't it? A bit like kind of my show, the Parrsitivity. People get that mixed up as well and things. But
Right.
it's a great word, like, name, and like, how did you kind of like, what is it involved and what's it kind of about, and
Sure.
how did
Well,
you get into that?
a lot of people think that, isms are quotes and quips and, and certainly there's part of that. But, a Zism is essentially the life lessons that we all have, the things that we say to one another as guiding principles and advice and, pearls of wisdom. So we all have our Zisms, and I'm not going to be able to convert to Zed every time. I have to say I'm not used to saying that, but you know what I mean. And there is some, well, I have an affinity for the Z, of course, because of my last name, but there's actually a story behind it where I'm in my third career now of sorts. And my first one, when I started out on my own in 2002, I started a company called Z Communication. And I had a brand asset of this dotted Z because it was like connecting expression with impression. That was the tagline about how we offer our services. So it was kind of a connect the dot thing. And then back then, I was in a coffee shop, and a woman unexpectedly came up to me, and saw something with it on there, and she took my pen out of my hand, which was very strange. And she drew a line through the Z, kind of as you would a dollar sign, and then she drew a dot at the bottom and a circle at the top. And I should have my book here within reach. I better. What kind of self-respecting author would I be? So when I hold this up, it's right on the cover, so it's like a Rorschach test. But it's a man. It's a man kind of marching forward. Now, when I show this to people, it's like, I don't know. I see a key. I see a dollar sign. It's kind of funny, But once you see what I'm showing you, it you can't unsee it. And over the years, through my work, I always had an affinity for it, but I couldn't find a place. It was always a force fit. And and then I started my second career in 2007. I founded a nonprofit called the Internship Institute, which covers apprenticeships and all things, work-based learning. And I've mainly done that ever since. Well, with that kind of an organization, I tried it, in social media posts, nothing. So when I decided to write the book had to be named a Z because I just decided that things are going right on the cover. So that is the backstory, is that it got named after the fact that I wanted to put that on the cover, and how it all came together.
No, that's awesome. And I think, like, so the book kind of is about, like, your mindset and, like life and energy and being a person, like, like on the deeper side of it. Is that kind of what it goes into?
Yeah,
And
there's a lot of personal, if you're going to put yourself out there about a book like this, I certainly, revealed a number of things that had and have been very private for me.
yeah.
The book is written as though you're having a personal conversation, like you're sitting next to someone in a coffee shop, and uh, the book really covers four areas. You've got self-discovery and mindset. That's certainly at the foundation of everything in and around personal development. And then we get into well-being and managing energy. Certainly mood health is part of that. And it's something that is a private disclosure. For example, I have had to contend with depression
Mm,
since my teens, actually. And so
mm,
that certainly drives a lot of what I have to do to take the best care of myself so that that doesn't happen. And then it gets into relationships and interactions, and then we go into in life enrichment, legacy, achievement, things around, what is your why, your purpose, and how do you pursue that. And so the whole point of it, really, for me, is to have it be actionable, keep it simple, practical, so that people come out of the reading experience with with some specific next steps to take around this life enrichment action plan, which stands for as LEAP, and it just continues to evolve. But that's essentially the overview of the book.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome, and I think like it's so important to figure out what your why is, and it was something that I was thinking about recently quite a lot, and I did like a sort of short video on it. And I was thinking to myself, like, people sometimes tell people, kind of to do X, Y, Z, and this is what you need to do. And I think like before that, people probably aren't going to be able to do that as strongly unless they kind of like don't know what their why is, or that purpose, as you mentioned. And I think, especially I think with COVID and this kind of situation, a lot of people, what from what I've seen, have discovered more so what their why is, kind of had that time to think more about it. And it's like these things in life, and to have that kind of self-awareness, isn't it, is so key as a person, because a lot of people were so kind of caught up with everything else that's going on around them.
Absolutely. Well, during COVID is certainly the right time. I mean, what else are we going to do? We're running out of Netflix. Um, but seriously, everybody wants to matter, whatever that is to them, and figuring that out. And certainly there's a, it works up to really helping to crystallize that. And also, more from an entrepreneur standpoint, if your goals have to do with something entrepreneurially, I certainly focus on that through my experience about how do you go and achieve that as well. But, not everybody wants to set the world on fire either, but they still want to have a why. That could be related to their family. That could be related to self-improvement, so that they are enjoying being staying in the present and not getting caught up in things like worry or past baggage, so that they can enjoy life and be with their family, or whatever that is to them. For me, the book was certainly part of it. I mean, like a lot of people, it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I the year before last hit an inflection point. My son Jake was off to college and had a little bit of time. I was between grants for the nonprofit, and it was a question that's also in the book is, well, what would I regret not doing? I have some time here. I want to do something from a project standpoint. And so it just got me into action. I was like, I gotta write this book. And of course, Z-Man, the the character on the cover, I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna make that happen. And I think for anybody who's looking to say to write a book, let's say that's part of their why, and it seems very daunting at the onset, I just recommend you get into action. Take a couple of days and just write out, well, what is this? Frame it out. What would my chapters be? That doesn't take too long. And then you'll look at it, maybe show it around to some people. Is this interesting? Do I write this? Maybe it's a blog, or maybe it's something that you really found yourself once you got into it, that passion ignited. And now, and that was somewhat of the experience for me, but it was also like, well, okay, now I've almost come too far, right? I don't want to stop here. I have to keep going and see it through. Of course, at that moment you're like, oh, I did it. And then you're like, oh no. And then, a year has to go by before you really get through the entire process and editing. But that's what I would recommend, for example, for anyone who wants to do that.
Yeah, no, I think they're really great points. And I think, like you said, just by kind of just taking action and just kind of just doing it, and just kind of going with the process, and just kind of just taking that action and just reflecting on it and looking at other people's feedback on what you're doing as well, see what other people think about it.
Well, for where we are in this particular time, and if you look back and say, well, frankly, actually, the book came out the exact week that everything shut down here in the States with COVID. All my signings, my launch party, it's not a complaint. It was just, you have to make that adjustment. And even now, we didn't know what to expect. And thank goodness that there's, hopefully, an end in sight with the vaccines. But we're all still going to be cooped up for a while. And wherever and however far we've come in what this experience is, if you fast forward 5 years from now, we're not going to forget any amount of time, what this was. But what would you like this time to have been? You got in shape, you worked on yourself, you enriched your experience with your family, you connected with old friends, even though it was, online, or you discovered and pursued your why. How do you take this or any other circumstance that presents something in the way of adversity, and turn it to your advantage about something that you can be proud of. And that's certainly how I've been spending my time as well, with the book and building out some other things that are on the horizon.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think that's a really great point as well to think about, is like, what is it that you kind of want to look back on during this time, the things you did and, the things you worked on, rather than just kind of waiting for things to blow over. There's a lot of things you can be doing in this time. And I know everyone's different, but I think, like you said, it's far more advantageous by kind of using it productively, partly to work on someone, or to figure something out. And I think, like, as well, through the book, you're doing something that you're passionate about, plus you're providing value to other people, and people can read that and take goodness from the book, and what you're doing.
Yeah, and part of it actually also happens without choice. For me, I mentioned my third career, so of course the first two, marketing and the nonprofit. Well, when COVID hit, naturally we're talking about internships and apprenticeships. Well, that's not going to be a booming business for a while. We focus on the employers, so there's not a lot of programs that are seeking assistance. The grants not really going to be focusing on this kind of an endeavor. So after 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears, I had to side burner the Internship Institute. And so when I first wrote the book, coming out of that time period of having the opportunity to write it, it was really meant to be a one and done for me. I didn't start out looking to be, I'm going to start some coaching business, or this is going to be my my business card, or what have you. It was just something I felt the need to do. I funded it out of my pocket, and it was going to be just that. And since then, especially of course with the nonprofit on the side burner, thankfully I have another business with my wife Erica, and that takes up some of my time, but I've really started to lean in, and it's been unexpected. I mean, the podcast that I started last July, happened in part because of a conversation after an interview like this, and our host was like, "Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast?" And I was like, "No." Yeah, it's not anything I was ever into. And I'm coming up on show 40 next week, and I've just never been happier, just leaning in.
Yeah.
And we're here, our microphones, and
Yeah,
we talked about
yeah.
that before the show. I had to get this for the interviews that we're doing now, and it was like, oh, I have this microphone now, so give it a try. So I've been enjoying that. And now, a book is only going to get you so far initially, and a podcast is, commercial free. If I'm going to do something here, I have to keep going. This coming week, which is, I believe, around the time that we're going to be airing, I'm going to be making some reveals about what I've been working on, which is a mindset reset course that is a front end around self-discovery and perception and earned confidence and winning the battle within. Those are the sections. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then I have a master course, which is 29 days. And I don't go halfway on these things. So I've basically taken all the concepts and built them out in activities, and just presenting it in a different way that will be experiential for the course taker, learner, to come through and then come out with a LEAP plan as described. But this time it's not coming out of book format. It's really very specific. So I couldn't be more excited. And in a way, it's a little bit like a life taking me more than my designing it myself, just because of circumstances. And honestly, Adam, I've never been happier. I just really think, feel like things are going my way. So
No, that's awesome. And I think as well, like, it's really great, all that you're doing. And as you said, like, you was on other people's podcasts sharing, what you're doing. And I think through podcasting, you can learn so much and you can develop so much in so many areas, and it can open up so many other opportunities. And as you said, you've kept on doing it, and you just keep on doing it. And you're now running this course, next week, and I think that's really good as well, because a lot of people out there need help and support and that kind of guidance and that mentorship, especially like now. And I think podcasting, I think it's great that you're happy in what you're doing as well, because I think that's what we should all kind of find, something that we kind of enjoy doing and something that you can provide, value to other people through like this source.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be more grateful. And like anything, it takes, it's effortful. It takes a lot of hard work to things aren't going to law of attraction, for example, which I talk about in the book at a certain point, that has a role, but it's not going to write a book for you. It's not going to create these kinds of things. And there's, other entrepreneurial approaches that you have to take. There's just no other way but through. We were talking before the show. I had, we had over a foot of snow here in Philadelphia yesterday, and it was heavy. It was snow heavy. And, a couple hours out there, and with the driveway in the street, it's one shovel at a time, half shovels at a time, just to kind of get down to the
Yeah.
ground with it. And it's the same thing. It's just it has to get done. There's a here to a there until the driveway is clear. It's the same thing with writing a book. It's the same thing with anything. One at a time, no other way but through, and you get there if you just keep going. So, just the no quit attitude. And the course is also for coaches and master coaches, because I feel like there's a lot in there that they can bring to their audiences. And then once they experience it for themselves, they're going to want their audiences to experience it. So I'm actually focusing a lot on the coaching industry for them to experience this for themselves. And I think it's going to help them bring value and new ideas as well.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that, like as you mentioned, it's like that 1%, isn't it? With the shoveling the snow, that 1%, it all builds, and each like shovel you're clearing that snow over time, and as you mentioned, like that kind of relates to so many things, or pretty much everything in life. It's that 1% builds over time, and it's showing up, isn't it? Like you've got to show up for the podcast, you've got to show up, for your course, and I think the more you do that, the easier it gets. And I think it can be daunting when you start out doing these things, but as you just do it and do it and do it, you just gain more momentum and you gain more confidence through that process. And I think the course as well, like we're constantly learning all the time. So I think it's so important that we engage in courses, as the one that you're setting up as well, because we never stop learning, do we? Really?
Well, that's the goal, I think, and to each their own. It's a lot easier when it's necessary. When you when you don't have a choice, the cars have to get out. So the driveway has to get shoveled. But when these things, when it comes to the things that are in essence voluntary, the question is, are you going to give yourself a choice? Is it important enough to you to make it something that you will yourself to do and keep going to do? I know that you talk a lot about uh, mood health, for example, and I want to address that comment. And people say, well, mood health, mental health. So I define mood health as anything having to do with depression, anxiety, bipolar, that spectrum. We're not getting into schizophrenia, PTSD, not the wider spectrum of what's considered mental health. And I think the thing with mood health is that and I'll explain why I'm changing the subject, but it is related. Is that everybody's affected. Whether you have some diagnosis or not, we all have down days. We all have, whatever degree that is, we all have to manage our mood in one way, shape, or form. And so the principles in and around it are universal. But for me, as I mentioned, the stakes are higher. And anybody who knows what true depths of depression are like, never, you never want to feel that way. It's a lot like sinking into quicksand. And I have this approach called the 3-day rule, which is that I know I'm going to have down days. Everybody has down days. And then, I might take a punch in the gut, with something, a grant I applied for doesn't come through, or, whatever, something that hurts, something's going to hurt. But if I get to to a third day and I really feel myself sinking, I have this 3-day rule where I have to get into action. I can't lay around. I have to work out. I have to create structure for myself. What are my go-to coping skills? I have to listen to music. My son got me into hip hop.
Nice.
For a 50-something-year-old guy. It's unusual. I take some heat for that. But, that's the goal. And it really is about parenting yourself. That's what made me think of it is you have to make yourself do it. And you have to. And believe me, when you're, knee deep in quicksand, getting yourself to work out is a
Mm,
lot harder than just getting yourself to work out if you weren't in quicksand.
mm,
And you have to do it anyway. And that's the point. And so I just think it's what it's part of it's self-discipline, but part of it is just, I've been through that enough times and I know myself well enough that if I
mm.
don't do this, the consequences are going to be much worse. So, the lesser of the two consequences is, get off your tail and go do
Yeah,
it. No choice.
yeah,
So that's that's how it is for me.
yeah. No, I think I really appreciate you talking about that, and I think like like I can relate to that because I had depression and PTSD in the past, following like an accident I had. I don't know if you saw my profile, but I fell through like a skylight on a roof, and um, I was about 13. I think it was 13, 14, and I remember like exercise definitely helped me. You know, my mom talked about it, and she said that I was running on a treadmill in this leisure center, and I was like, I wasn't even running because because of the trauma. It was like kind of like slow kind of jogging. But then over time, I was running. But I think exercise is so key, and having that kind of routine in place, or that kind of structure where you're doing, and kind of um, just taking each step at a time, isn't it? Really, I mean, you just got to be kind to yourself, I think, and just kind of take each day. Because I mean, when I was going through stuff, I was just getting frustrated with myself. But then I think if you do that, it's going to make it worse. So, as you said, when you're in that quicksand, just try and if you have depression or things like that, just kind of small steps, isn't it? Just having that like bit of structure and like those things to look forward to, because it can be difficult if you can't you don't have anything to do. I mean, people get bored, they lose momentum and things like that. So it has like a domino effect, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I do think that physical well-being is at the heart of it, in terms of giving yourself the energy and I think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You've got your mental
Yeah.
health, your emotional health, your spiritual, it all aligns. But certainly at the foundation is getting into action and giving yourself that momentum. And we forget it's one of the things with depression, especially for low level depression, which a lot of people suffer from, and they don't realize it, is that's the point. It's so you don't realize it. And then
Mm.
suddenly like a day comes, or let's just say that spring feeling, and you're like, I really feel good. I really feel like myself. And then you either realize it or you don't, but you were slightly depressed. The past 3 months you were sluggish. So, again, that mood health. There's mood scale that I have that is conceptual. It's kind of like a thermometer, right? So,
Mm.
you're maybe like a little bit on the lower side of center of balance, and and you just feel that sluggishness, and that is part of that experience, but it's so subtle you don't realize it. And Adam, I really like what you said about self-kindness. It's something that I talk about a lot.
Mm.
Is it okay if we go there a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm open. I'm open.
um one of the foundational concepts in the book is called earned confidence. It's actually chapter 1. And a lot of this comes from my life experience. It's really honestly one of the main reasons why I wrote the book, because it's something that served me so well over the years. And it's when I talk to it about people, it resonates, and it's just somewhat of a responsibility I felt to discuss. And it really just comes down to the fact that we've all been through everything that we have in our lives, and we've all been through the ringer. Whatever that is for any individual, it's a sliding scale, but we've had to cope, we had to make it through. And the reality, of course, is that we're still standing. And as obvious as that sounds, it really is a reminder of the logic that we have the earned confidence to know we've proven to ourselves that we are fully capable of coping with whatever happens in real time. So when it comes to those who worry, who are in that habit of worrying or that feeling of anxiety, aside from anything that's chemical imbalance related. Uh, Earned confidence is really that grounding principle to pull you into the present. And I look at that as a foundational building block in and around self improvement and personal development. And so is self kindness. Self kindness is by extension around winning the battle within. And in the same way that earned confidence is about reminding you not to get caught up in things that are uncertain to happen, self kindness is really about not letting yourself be dragged down by whatever that past baggage is. It's both work on the other, the past and future side of what it takes to stay in the present. Of course, gratitude is a huge part of mindfulness. All of that goes into the center of helping further ground you in the present. But when we look at self-improvement overall and we think of, I just don't feel self-confident or self-esteem or self-love and all the obvious things, self-belief, I want to feel this way. I want to feel this way about myself, but I don't know how. How do I get from here to there? I work on myself. I don't feel any different, or I roller coaster in the whole experience. And it's true. It's very vague. It's hard to get your arms around. How do I feel self-love, for example? But when you go to self-kindness and earn confidence, it really is very specific. I have the earned confidence because I've been through everything I've been through, and I'm still here. And with self-kindness, the buy-in is really around, well, why be anything less than kind to myself? Like, as simple as a question of that, that's just about as rhetorical of a question as you should be asking. And of course, if the answer isn't obvious, then you know where to start. But once you buy in to that and say, well, okay, I'll be nothing less than kind to myself, what does that mean? And the reality is that it's either a this or a that. It makes it tangible because you are either being kind to yourself or you are not being kind to yourself in any given circumstance. So if you are a people pleaser, if you're somebody who has a hard time saying no, and certain individuals might know this about you, and maybe they lean on you a little bit more than they should. Maybe you're even coming in, up against people who are more manipulative. We talk about that as well. When I say we in the book, it's me, myself, and I. But in the conversation, in the way the book is written, it's that. And it is that moment where you go back to self-kindness and you say, well, if I say yes, will that be kind to myself? Because if you don't say no when you know that you ought to, then you take that double hit. I should have said no, and then you have to do whatever it is that you said yes to, and your self-esteem really suffers. So I really encourage, thank you to everybody who's hearing this, to rely on earned confidence and self-kindness to ground yourself in the present and have it be tangible for you in order to push forward in your personal growth.
I think they're really, really great points. And I think, like you said, that self-kindness and that gratitude and that, like being okay with yourself is massive. And I think people sometimes, I think, rely on external things to kind of give them that kind of sense of feeling as, for being okay. And not, like you said, looking within and dealing with whatever it may be that's stopping them from kind of doing that. And I think, as you said, you have to kind of go through those motions. You have to really get to know yourself and probably, go through some discomfort to kind of get to the other side. Because I definitely, used to be a people pleaser when I used to work in restaurants, and I remember not wanting to make any mistakes. And you have to kind of people please in some way because you're giving a service. But
yeah, it is your job. I'm going to say
yeah,
it's a little skewed when you're getting paid to be a people pleaser.
yeah, but there's that kind of balance with it where like trying too hard. I found that when I was like a teenager, I was trying too hard, to try and get a certain outcome. And there's those kind of like behaviors, isn't it? And I think that kind of all ties into like insecurity and these kind of things. But as you get to know yourself more and be kind to yourself, it's ultimately that relationship that you have with yourself, isn't it? Is how you're going to probably have a relationship with other people, because it's like if you're okay, then the people around you, probably 99% of the time, are going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we are okay. And
Mm,
you know, when as things have continued to evolve, and for example, as I redeveloped Z-isms in these courses that are
mm,
coming out in the coming weeks, um, earned confidence is no longer the first part. Earned confidence is the second part of self-discovery. The first is perception,
mm,
and the things that you're describing. Uh, you can look at the very same set of circumstances and be optimistic or pessimistic.
mm,
That's, you know, they apply to the very same set of circumstances. So one of the things that we talk about is a perception snapshot. So if you, and that's in the book too, but if you compartmentalize, because we have so many moving parts, it's so hard. Media, you know, everything's our life, our demands. You know, it's hard to really stop. And so if you take this snapshot and you say, well, are my basic needs met? A roof over my head, I've got food in the fridge, on and on. Yes, that's an affirmative, I would hope, for most people. And then, is everybody healthy? Am I okay? People I love okay? You know, after that, everything else is fairly circumstantial. You know, are you having financial troubles? Maybe. I think a lot of people go through that at any given time in their life, but earn confidence. You may not even have the answer, but you know you'll figure it out because we're
mm,
survivors. We're going to keep that roof over our heads. It might not be easy, but we will. So again, you know, you can take a perception snapshot on a given day and be like, I just had a breakup, you know, I'm feeling terrible, I feel insecure. Okay, that's today. And what do you need to do, not to minimize it, but what do you need to do in this very moment in your life, you know, is when you step back from that and say, okay, this something's in the negative column, is it really all that bad? Is it permanent? And if it's not, then there's something, you know, an
mm,
end. And if it is, whatever that is, then there's the, you know, the coping side. So
mm.
again, I don't mean to oversimplify and kind of you know, take out the emotion or the life strife
Yeah.
that we all have to go through, but it's important to remind ourselves that generally speaking, we're okay.
Mm. That's it. And I think you made a good point there as well. Like, especially as human beings, we adapt. And I think we've definitely seen this in the past year, like last year with COVID, so many businesses, people, adapting and pivoting, to adapt to the demands of what's happening. And, if you think, social distancing, face mask, I mean, I won't go into that too much because I know people have got their own opinions on that. But basically, yeah, trying to, people adapting, people doing one job, so a lot of people lost their jobs and there's a lot of unemployment and people are there, having to adapt to provide, a roof over their heads to do different jobs and different ways of, communicating with people. And I think, like you said, we can sometimes forget, the things that we've been through in our lives and hard times. And as you said, we're still standing today, having gone through those things. It's that like own confidence and that self reflection and looking at where you stand and having that gratitude, kind of for where you're at and that you've been through X, Y, Z, and this right now isn't probably as bad as what we went through previously, in whatever circumstance.
Yeah, you know, I think the overarching direct question is whatever that you're going through now, is this the worst thing you've ever been through?
Mm,
Because if it's not, then you know that you can handle it.
mm. Yeah, that's a really good question, isn't it? And I think, I mean, I've had times throughout this COVID thing where, I've kind of felt probably a bit claustrophobic almost, like because you can't go out certain places, that kind of thing. I'm very extroverted and that kind of thing. I like, being around people. So, like I said, we all have our own discomforts and things going on, but I think you have to own it and you have to look at that and accept it because it's no good if we're not, being honest with ourselves.
I mean, look, you know, there's no way around it. I mean, there's grief here. You
Mm,
know, I miss my friends. I miss being out. You know, I play ice hockey. You know, the rinks get shut
mm,
down, and it sucks. It
yeah.
flat out sucks. You know, it's not to ignore the things that we have to grieve for, but you can't control it.
Mm,
So, what can you control? And if that means turning inward and or working on yourself or reaching out to people you haven't before, or doing more Zooms, or being proactive, those are choices that you can make uh, to compensate while you have the opportunity around the things that you can't do. My son should be at college. He's not.
Hmm.
So it really stinks for him. I feel for him that he's missing out on this
Yeah.
particular experience. He'll get back. But right now we're able to have some quality time that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And a lot of people are going
Hmm.
through that. So, you really have to look. I just really believe in finding the silver lining. I mean,
Yeah.
why not? If you don't strive for that, then you're just shorting yourself in terms of your quality of life.
Hmm. That's so key. As you mentioned that silver lining to the situation, as you said, like, okay, you can't go to college, but you've got that more kind of quality time with him now, than before. And I spoke to someone else, and he said that it's the most he's spent time with his wife, in 15 years or something crazy like that.
And they're still getting
And
along. So that's really the main thing.
yeah,
after
yeah,
wow, I didn't realize I could spend this much time with my spouse and everything's just
yeah,
great. That's good news. I
yeah,
don't know that Jake would agree on the enrichment of being home with parents
yeah.
and whatnot, but yeah, I mean that's the whole point. And there's so much here, and we're all just trying to do our best and learn and grow
Mm,
and make the best of everything that we can. And
yeah.
why you know why accept less than that for yourself?
Mm, yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's a really good point as well. That we need to focus on the things that we can control, and to pivot in these times, and be grateful, for where we're at, and to appreciate what's around us, isn't it, as well? And in your book as well, you mentioned like beware of spiders in one of your chapters. Like, do you mind going into that? What that
Yeah,
means?
talk about it. I don't know if we have enough time for that one. It's funny because it's like if you look at the chapters in the book, and I almost didn't put this in the book, and because it's cautionary, and which one of these is not like the other, right?
Hmm.
It really speaks to again, almost like with self kindness, it's a this or a that. And uh, the chapter leads off essentially that there are only two kinds of people in the world. There are spiders, and there are those who get caught in webs. And
Hmm.
the reason we're talking about manipulators is that that's a that's a conscious decision that someone makes to do, to impose their will on someone else, to have others bend to yours and be manipulative, is a conscious decision. It takes that energy, to somewhat be, devious is somewhat of a strong word, but it's not necessarily inaccurate. And the rest of us are kind of, who wants to be on guard all the time, right? We prefer to be oblivious. We'll accept the consequences of misjudging somebody and getting burned, because we don't want to have to not think of the good in people.
Hmm.
And then how do you over time, how do you recognize, who are those people? How do I stay clear of them? Or if I do have to be on guard, or at least be, a little bit, have a doubt about somebody, how do I handle a situation that might come up so that I don't get caught in a web? And I have to say, Adam, there's a lot of hard living that went into,
Yeah.
this chapter. And it's just life. I have to say, it's the one that I hear almost the most about,
Hmm.
is be aware of spiders. And it's just because it's so true. So,
It's
yeah.
it's definitely a harsh truth, isn't it? And I think if you've experienced it, I mean, for me, it makes me think about when I was at school. The kind of people I was around at school, and I'm okay with them now. It's all by and by, but when I was in school, I was around like spiders, and I got caught in the web, and I was trying to break out of that web based on that event that happened in my life. That gave me PTSD and all that, and then from that event, I then realized, okay, I can't be doing X, Y, Z. I can't be around these people. And when you try and break away from, say spiders, they don't like it, and it's hell. And that happened, but I think through going through that, it's made me very aware, more aware, more conscious and streetwise, around people and that kind of thing. I was on that defense, in the past, but not anymore. But I think like it is a harsh truth, isn't it? Sometimes you have to kind of go through that and learn that the hard way to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to put myself in X, Y, Z, scenarios.
We all get, look, we all get caught. That's the whole point of it just happens because people are who they are. It's a lot, the dynamics of it are a lot like bullying, in terms of standing up for yourself, and then they know they won't be able to take advantage of you, in that way, and they'll respect you more, and know not to, know that you have their number, essentially. But people are who they are, and I don't know. It's nature versus nurture here. I don't know. It's necessarily their fault, and
Yeah.
and with all due respect, there's a sliding scale here, right? I mean, somebody might have to behave that way out of defense because they're in a politically charged work environment.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily make them that, or they might have, even if they do it 1% of the time, doesn't mean they are always, they're always that way. It's just they have the capacity to be that way. And will they do that to you? But if you observe somebody in your life who does that to others, even though that they won't do it to you, you really do need to be a little bit more on guard, just be in observing their behavior, because they have the capacity to act that way.
I see it online. I see it online a hell of a lot. And I've had it with, people on LinkedIn sometimes, or people on social media. And I see it and I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, you're just trying to hook me in for your own needs. You don't actually care about, X, Y, Z. You're just kind of, looking out for yourself and trying to manipulate me through, whatever script or structure, if that makes sense. And I think and the thing is, you can be so easily hooked into these ways, if that makes sense, through being sucked in by other people. But, as you said, there's a reason why someone's like that. And sometimes, like there's business and, there's all different things that tie into that, isn't there, ultimately? But I don't think that's not the card I could, deal to other people.
I think that, when it talks about, not getting caught in webs and, you feel like you get burned, how do you stand up for yourself? And I think that one of the best defenses with somebody who acts that way is a knowing smile. Meaning, I have your number and I'm going to smile right at you. And it's meaningful. They get the message, and then they can, I've already used the word, but then they can suck on it.
Yeah.
So, that, it's an energy thing. We talk a lot about, I don't want to get too much more in a digression with respect to your listeners in your show, but a lot of it also is a whole other section in well-being around managing energy and how we affect one another. There's an energy transfer that occurs between people. And so even if it's just not the spider thing, it's just someone's having a bad day, and you go to a restaurant when we can do that, and a server is having a bad day, to your point. Well, okay, everyone has bad days. Are you going to be compassionate, or are you going to be complain? You're going to complain because you're paying to be served, what have you. These are all personal decisions that we have to make in the moment. But if you're out with your friends and you're having a good time and you make the choice to complain, well, now you let somebody who's not having the best day, that energy transfer to you. You could decide to try and make that person smile the next time they come back to your table. It's another way to handle it.
Yeah.
So
that's,
it's just really about mindfulness in and around how we interact and taking care of yourself around that energy transfer.
That's it. And I think it's as well, it's that empathy, isn't it? Having that empathy and that understanding for someone else and what they're maybe going through. And there's probably a reason why they're that way. I've gone to restaurants and people are like nervous, if they're doing a transaction, and I'm like, it's fine, because I empathize with that because I've been there myself. I see it. You kind of have that understanding, and it's definitely that that self-awareness as well, isn't it?
Well, It is, and it builds off of self-kindness too. I mean, when people think of kindness, the first reaction is, to think of it toward others. And really is that compassion moment. I mean, look, all of us again go through so much in our lives, and at any given time, you never know what's going on for anyone. They could be just trying to hold it together. And meaning naturally they're that close to not being able to hold it together. And it's easy to forget that most of us go through that at times. And that's the moment when to treat others with kindness, and that's good for everybody.
Mm. And I think especially now, because I was listening to a podcast with Joey Diaz, and he was saying that his wife was driving the car that was caught in traffic, and she was going to tap the horn in front of the car in front of him. And he's like, don't do that, because tensions are pretty high for a lot of different people at the minute, and you don't know what's going on with their day. You banging the horn on the car could just make them snap and do something. I think it's, as you said, everyone's kind of spinning their own plates to some extent, and you just, like you said, you just don't know what someone else is going through, or what's on their mind. I mean, I think you can pick up on people's energy. I think like you can pick up on how people are, by their energy sometimes, or you just you tune into that. But ultimately, behind that, we don't know.
Yeah, that's just essential. I don't think enough people are aware of the energy transfer and how much that dance happens. And even just from a mindfulness standpoint, if you just put it in your forethought as you interact with people, that you just want to take a check-in,
Mm.
observe, how is this person doing today? And uh that might be you on the other side of that conversation, in
Yeah.
need of being uplifted. And look, it's the same thing back to the 3-day rule. I make sure I
Mm.
reach out, and who lifts me up? Who do I want to talk to that I'm going to be able to laugh and joke
Mm.
around with? We should all have more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. That's a really good point. And I'm grateful, to connect with you, and that we can do that, and to be in that kind of that tribe of people. And I just want to say, like, massive thank you to our friend Paul, Paul Forcione, who's got the podcast Actions and Limits podcast, and he's a great guy. And I think, like you said, it's important to to look at who you're surrounding yourself with, isn't it? The kind of people you're talking to and engaging with, because it's priceless, really. I think when you kind of find the people that you resonate with.
Yeah, that's right in the spider chapter too, Adam. Like, who's your
Yeah.
tribe? Who's your tribe?
Mm.
Life's too short to have people draining you. So,
Yeah.
making a conscious decision, who are those people that you surround yourself with? Few things are more important than that in terms of, your day to
Mm.
day.
Yeah. No, exactly. And
Paul's good people. So thanks to Paul.
yeah, yeah. No, that's it. No, exactly. And I completely agree. And I just thinking, like, where can people find you on social media and like your website? Where can they find your book as well?
Sure, thank you. I've actually just switched everything to my name domain, so mattzinman.com, and everything is now centralized with the podcast and the book, and these courses that are coming out will be, uh, uh, I think by the time people hear this, it'll
Yeah,
be
yeah.
up. So I'm psyched it's all happening at the same time. The book is there, on Amazon or on the website. There's a sample to read for free, so you check it out, and you'll know if you want to keep reading, and feel free to buy it. So
Yeah.
but I'm really psyched about these courses, and I think this is going to take everything to the next level. And I know it's already making a difference for the people who are trying it out. So I feel I'm just so grateful to be here with you and be able to talk about it, and what's about to unfold. So thank you so much for having me, Adam. Thank you to your audience, for listening in.
Yeah. No, you're very welcome, Matthew. And I'll definitely promote, everything that you're doing if you want me to promote it for you or share it. And I'll definitely put your content on the bio and everything else. And when you do the courses, I can always share that and promote that as well. And I wish you all the best in everything that you're doing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
No, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome. You're welcome.
Cheers.
Cheers. Take care.